Beautiful. Thank you, Barry. Now give me a yell if you can hear me at the back. Woo, 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 woo! So welcome, Gympie. Welcome to the Community Unity event. And I'm so proud to be a part of it. And I'm so proud to the organiser group, to Sharon McCauley, and to all the others that have played an amazing role in getting it up and running. My name is Ilona Lan. I'm a natural health advocate, a freedom of choice ambassador, a homeschooling mum, a farmer, and now I've been active on the ground in the community since No Jab, No Pay and Play in 2015. Like many, I've moved to Gympie, so I'm a newbie, everyone. Hands up if you're a newbie. Heaps here, look at that. So many came at about the same time because we escaped what we believe, and I believe will be the most tyrannical use of power and unnecessary government overreach in our history. Hence the event today. What became clear to so many is that we cannot sustain the path we are on. The system is broken. We have to hand the power back to the people, and you are the people. And today it's about getting to know who's sitting beside you, who the people are in the community. Who can we turn to? Who can we hug? Who can we work with? And let's make Gympie thrive while other communities survive. And that's why I'm here, and that's why I love Gympie. Graham Hood is Hoodie's Heroes is one of the organiser groups today, and their tents over here. We've got My Place Gympie as well, organisers. When Graham was here last year, October last year, his words ran through our heads. This is what he said: "Don't expect the answers to come from me. The answers are within you." He also said something that was really powerful. If a revolution was to start, it would definitely start in Gympie. Yes? Woo, 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 woo! Go Gympie! So thanks, Sharon, for that quote. I am going to do a little bit of housekeeping. We've got toilets over here. We've got amazing stalls today. We've got the food vans. So we've got 9 amazing guest speakers today. So hang on to your seats because I think the ride's going to be a bit up and down. We're going to touch on some really serious issues, but we're going to offer solutions, and we're going to offer hope, and we want to inspire, and we want to create. So without further ado, I want to introduce Arnie Bucky from the Karbi tribe to do Welcome to Country. Thank you.
Around. My name is Arnie Bucky. Dakan Tuku. I'm a Karbi elder from this area. I won't go into the length and the breadth of the area that we, the Karbi mob occupy, but I want to acknowledge my and your ancestors, past and present. I'm going to say that this isn't an actual welcome to country. This is an education. In the beginning, before colonisation, people arrived in Australia. Originals were governed by law, which laid down by creative ancestral beings. Law came from tradition, not from parliaments. The creative beings travelled across the countryside, giving the earth the shape we now recognise. They formed the air, the sky, the rivers and tributaries, the mountains and all other features you see today. Then created the plants, animals and men and women who were to inhabit the landscape. Groups of clans were given their own languages and the law which were required to obey. The creative beings told the first men and women how they should behave towards another. They also define the boundaries of the country, which would belong to each group, and lay down how the land should be cared for by use and ceremony. The basic principles was that people were obliged to maintain the land and its traditions for future generations. And us as the Gympie would like to make sure that everybody knows that with your help, you can help us to make the generations of the future have the freedom that we're helping to get them today. Okay. The first inhabitants of the Maroochy district were the original people of the language group, which consisted of a number of tribes, including the Gympie, Nabo, Dunanburra and Gympie. For perhaps as many as 40, 50, 60,000 years, they hunted the ranges, fished the rivers and gathered seafood from the ocean. The burning of the countryside at appropriate times was a regular practice. For communities, the land was, and still is, integral to the culture and the way of life. They practiced holistic land management that ensured the health of the land for future generations. Gympie is the name of the actual language spoken by the local original men and women. Their territories were bordered by mountain ranges and the river systems. There were many clans within the vast area, approximately 20, each numbering from 150 to 500 strong. All of these family groups shared the language and would come together on regular basis for special ceremonies such as marriage and festivals. Our gatherings that held great significance was the Bunya gatherings. People would come from afar and wide to be involved in these important meetings. The Bunya gatherings was quite a large-scale event, and there was also a smaller Bunya gathering held every year in the Blackall Range on the Sunshine Coast at a place now called Bowron, Pocket Dam. Lands were very popular for many people, not only for people but also for those living in the surrounding areas. I want to talk to everyone in regards of what is going on in Parliament House at the moment, in Federal Parliament, creating a voice and treaty. That is not what the originals are looking at, because we believe each and every tribe or clan have their own voice. We don't need one voice to voice our opinions. If we have that one voice, that's going to stifle all of the clans and the tribes throughout this continent. We need to all have that knowledge, so at the end of the day, when you, as the non-originals, go in there to vote, you must comprehend that we do not approve of the voice and we do not approve of the treaty. Thank you.
So thanks Arnie Bucky and the Kabi tribe. I just want to really thank some people again, but I just want to make sure that we honour the council. They've done an amazing job at tidying up the park for us today. They have worked with us on this event, which has actually been amazing to see. As we know in the past, that may not have been the case, but definitely they've been accommodating this time round. The Noosa Orchestra, who've been playing over at Fallen of the Forest, a big shout out to them. The Powerline Action Group, which you're going to hear from today with the powerful Katie. Big thank you to Dave and Virginia for their amazing truck. If you haven't seen it already, it's over near the toilets. That has been floating around the district, raising awareness about the power lines that are going through people's private property. The Forest of the Fallen, I want to do a shout out to Waterford West and to the Gympie stand in the park. To all the stallholders who come out, rain, hail and shine, credit to you. The food vans, particularly Burnett and the crew, they've done an amazing job with the stalls. We've had heaps of people put their hands up for volunteers. If you want to volunteer for any future events, Hoodies Hero Tents and My Place is the tents to go. We've had an amazing committee. I've worked on heaps of committees in the past, and I have to say this one's been one of the most active and a joy to work with, so well done to them. Barry, amazing with the bagpipes. The Retro Boys are going to rock our socks off after the event, after the speakers, so make sure you hang around because we'll get up and do a bit of a boogie. And the awesome Sharon McCauley, she's now part of Hoodies Heroes and she's been the driving force in this event. My Place Gympie, Hoodies Heroes, watch them thrive. We want to thank Liberty Monkland, Loco Barber at Mallow Street, Go Vita in Duke Street, the Keen Bean Cafe on Mary, Kalula Acupuncture, Joel's The Alchemist, Farmer and Son Cafe at Southside, Neil's Family Meats, Tom Grady Rural Merchandise and Supplies, I think that says. Go Tom. Advanced Chiropractic and Mitchell's Fruit and Vegetables. So I just want to do a big thank you because we can already see that it's a great community unity uniting event. Yeah? Now let's get on to the speakers. Who wants to hear the speakers? Yeah. And we have an amazing lineup today. We've got Dr. Andrew McIntyre, we've got Malcolm Roberts, we've got Michael Pratt, we've got Katie McMillan, we've got Jason Miles up next, and we've got a whole host of amazing speakers, and Craig McManus from My Place. So without further ado, let's introduce Jason Miles. So much of Jason's earlier life was built on the school of hard knocks, growing up in Sydney's West. Through all his experiences, Jason learned that integrity, honesty, and the pursuit of truth are the foundation of a virtuous life. Jason strives to be honest in his words and actions, and even when faced in difficult situations. Jason, as many of you may know, ran for Senate at the last federal election with the Great Australia Party. What an amazing feat. Just to put your hand up and to stand up in My Place deserves a badge, a Medal of Honour. Great. Jason has create, action and inspire, and that's his mission. So he's here today not only to move the world where people want and not the politicians, but to move everyone here today. So big round of applause for Jason.
Okay, g'day everyone. I've got 7 minutes. I've got to be on cue and I've got to speak fast. But thank you to Sharon for organising the event today, and thanks Alona, our amazing MC. I just want to also thank Arnie Bucky, and I'm pretty happy she said those words because today I want to talk about the voice. In fact, I've got 3 things. I doubt I'll get through all of them, so I'm going to go with the voice. I live in the South Burnett, and it's a 2.5-hour drive for myself and my wife to get over here today. And on the way, I spoke to a mate of mine in Torquay, Victoria, who is he's on the board of a community bank. And we were chatting about the banking system because I have a deep, fond leaning towards finances and the economy and what's going on in the global world. He's not quite on the same page as me with what's going on in the world, but you know what? That's a healthy respect for each other's opinion. But what he did say was, what are you talking about today? And I said, I'm going to talk about the voice to Parliament. And he said to me, oh, interesting. I was at a board meeting the other day and the board members were all discussing about how they could position the yes vote within this community bank. And power to him, he actually had the nerve to stand up and say, can I just ask one question? Does anybody know what a yes vote means? Not one board member knew what a yes vote meant. And I'm going to say this, nor did I. And like everything I've learnt in life, I've had to do my own research and my own discernment to come to an understanding of how I interpret it. As Alona said, I ran for the Great Australian Party, and they had, through Rod Culleton, and most of those, we had MOUs, Memorandums of Understanding, with the OSTFs. And what I learned from people like Patricia Karen and a bunch of others is that the white fella in government has no idea as to what the community people want. So what I wanted to do was find out more about the voice from the people that mattered. And so what I did was I interviewed them. And in fact, I interviewed a guy the other night, Jason Hartwig, but he's one of many that I've spoken with within the OSTF, within the tribal folk, about their views on the voice. And here's some of the information. Firstly, before that, we're going to vote later this year, and I'll make a point. I guarantee you it will be on grand final day. Now, I lived 17 years Victoria. Grand final for me is the AFL. In Queensland, a bit different, it'll be the NRL. But I bet you it'll be on a grand final day, because one thing the government loves is a distraction. And they'll pop it over there, and us apathetic Aussies will go along and think we're doing the right thing. So it's incumbent upon each of you to make sure you're having the right conversation. So in October, grand final day, 17.3 million of us will actually go and vote at a referendum. Now, that's a big percentage of our population. Of that, so we've got about 17.3, 470,000 of those registered voters belong to our original sovereigns. That's 2.7% of the electorate. And what we're asking 97.3% to do is vote on something that impacts them. That's a massive number. We've got no right to be doing that from the start, in my opinion anyway. So we're going to decide for what's going on with the OSTFs. And if one thing the Albanese government's done very well, is they've made this thing so bloody confusing. People have no idea what a yes vote means. They have no idea what it means for the OSTF to be within our constitution. So, I also want to make a point around the voice. As I understand it, the original Sovereign Tribal Federation, they call themselves peoples, plural. We're calling it the voice, singular, the voice. You know, for me, it's just not the right thing to be doing at a point anyway. I want to go back to the last referendum before I give you some words from the people that I spoke with. Our last referendum here was in 1999, and we voted on whether we want to become a republic and whether we wanted the head of state. And we said no. We absolutely said no, every state. During that referendum, we had information handed out which was yes or no. Now, I don't know about you, and this document is 38 pages long, and in it the then Commissioner talks about what do you have to do by law to distribute this information to every single Australian. By law. I rang the AEC, I said, can you quote me the law where it says it, please? Because right now, there is no conversation about the no. It's all about the yes. This is a 38-page document that is on the website. Sorry, I'm a bit loud, but at least people can hear me. That is on the AEC website. And in it, there are 18 arguments for yes and 18 arguments for no. Well, right now, we've spent millions upon millions on a yes vote, on propaganda. And so get on there, you can have a look at it. But that's exactly the information that Australians needed to see. That's the information we want to see to make an informed decision. And what about this from Albanese, if I may? The voice will be subservient to the Parliament. So why the hell are we pushing such a strong vote for yes when our own Prime Minister of a corporation tells us that they are going to be subservient to a corporation? Anyway, I'm long suspicious about government, and I have been for some time, but 2020 was definitely the icing on the cake. How long have I got? Going all right? Going? Hey? Is that 7 minutes? No. 1. All right. I told you I'd go too quick. Anyway, so for me, here's some of the things the OSTF people I've been speaking with are saying. Uluru delegates were threatened in 2017. Noel Pearson allegedly had a blank piece of paper he took to Uluru and got the peoples to sign it and then create it. I haven't validated, but that's one person that told me that I interviewed. This is the same as the Recognise campaign. We all disagree with that. Constitution recognition is still the same result, to capture us white fellas in their system. The government simply handpicked some black fellas as our representatives, but they are not. We did not select them. There has not been any consent with our tribe or tribes around us. When I asked them about The Voice, they thought it was Johnny Farnham or the TV show. If we are included in the Constitution, we will have no land rights, and it's a shame I've got more time, because you need to look at the UN documentation, folks, for us white people, what this means to you and your land, and the OSTF as well. They are going to come and they are going to take away your land through the global government. Anyway, I've got to end there, but thank you so much. Vote no.
Well done, Jason, thank you. When you're up here and you're speaking, time goes really quick. So we're going to try and move it along today. If you want any more information from any of the speakers, go up and ask them, have a chat to them after the event. Up next, we've got Katie McCallum. Katie McCallum is the owner and operator of Kilkeven General Store. She left a career in the Queensland Police Service to become a local shop owner and settle into a country lifestyle with her husband and kids. But now Katie finds herself involved in what she refers to as the fight for our future, standing against the proposed Powerlink Barumba piped hydro transmission lines threatening her region. Katie believes this is just the tip of the iceberg for landowners' rights and the search, because of the search for the green-powered economy. And we're thinking that that will push many over the edge. Katie is a self-described rational environmentalist and is a proponent for cleaner energy supplies, but not at the cost of prime rural land. So big round of applause to Katie, who's been active and going hard.
Straight into it. Thank you. All good. G'day everyone. I wanted to start today with a quote from a very famous, iconic Aussie. His name's Daryl Kerrigan. I'm sure you know him. I'm sure everyone knows him. Daryl once said, "It's not a house, it's a home. And a home is a man's castle." And from what I can tell, speaking to everybody, it's the dream of almost every Aussie to own a castle, to have a family and raise it in that castle, to be safe and hopefully retire peacefully and safely in that castle. It doesn't matter where your castle is, what it's made of. It could be a shed in a paddock, it could be a unit at the beach. It could be a multi-generational homestead in the middle of a cattle property. The fact of the matter is, it's our castle, and we live in it and we own it. And that's what we work hard for our whole lives. Now imagine if you woke up one day and you'd just been told that the government was intending on taking your castle, or just going to take a bit of land next to your castle. Even worse, imagine if you found out that about 100 metres out of the kitchen window of your castle, you were now going to be looking at gigantic 500 kV power lines with giant towers that have a 60 metre square footprint. And again, after that, you would have to put up with about 2 years of construction. So for 2 years, inside of your castle, you would be watching earth-moving equipment, cranes, helicopters, vehicles with tradesmen in them, coming and going while they construct it. Just imagine the trauma that would wreak on your life. It would destroy your lifestyle and everything you had ever worked for. Well, the reality for every single resident that lives out in the Mary Valley, in the Kilkeven, the Gympie South Side and the Widgie districts, was that in November and December of last year, we woke up to that news. We woke up to the news that Powerlink, which is a Queensland government-owned corporation, had chosen 3 4-kilometre corridors where they were about to put the power lines in to run the power from the proposed pumped hydro scheme at Barumba across to the Waluga substation. And for those of you who don't know where the Waluga substation is, it's that lovely spot on the Wide Bay Highway where all those black panels are now, on what was once prime rural agricultural land. I'm sure you all know where that is. So they announced 3 corridors, 4 kilometres wide. Could you imagine if you lived in one of those corridors? The fear of what was going to go on? So individual groups from each of those regions gathered together, decided we need to fight this. And what that did, and I believe it was actually a tactic on Powerlink's behalf, to pit the communities against each other. We don't want those lines. We'll say whatever we have to about the other people to make them have it. It was a disgusting event that Powerlink wrought upon us all. So my main involvement has been with the Kilkeven Action Group, so I'm going to speak directly at what happened with us. But what happened in Kilkeven is very similar to what happened with the other groups. So we find out in December that this is coming. We then look at the schedule online as to when they're running community consultations, and we find out that Kilkeven's been left off the list. So we make a phone call and we find out that, no, we held a meeting in Kilkeven a few weeks ago. But the thing is, I own the store in the main street of Kilkeven and I speak to everybody every single day. Not one person anywhere in Kilkeven district knew about that meeting and not one person attended it. I'm still waiting for Powerlink to tell me who the attendants were. They said that 4 people went. So after several tense conversations across a weekend with a manager from Powerlink, they decided that they would come back and have another meeting for us. So on the following Friday, the Kilkeven Town Hall filled. It's the most people I've ever seen in there. Powerlink turns up. The manager reluctantly got on the stage and introduced himself after I said to him, "You need to tell them why you're here, mate. There's 300 people here who want to know what you're here to talk about." And in his very brief introduction, while he stood there on the stage, he had a little bit of a Freudian slip, and out it came. This western route is our preferred route. So he'd already laid his cards out. They knew that they were going to choose the western route up the Black Snake Range and through Kilkeven for this line. So the question I ask myself is, why would you put 8 kilometres of other families and landowners and business owners through the trauma across Christmas of 2022 and into the new year? Why would you put them through the trauma of wondering what was going to happen to their homes when it was unnecessary? Clearly, Powerlink now knows that they've caused a lot of mental ill health to everybody, because suddenly they now have a free counselling service that any person who's been affected by these decisions they're making can ring up and they can go and see a psychologist for free. I think that's disgusting, that they can wrought that amount of trauma on a person's life and then just give you a card with the 1-800 number to tell you to make a phone call. So let's jump forward now to April. So a couple of weeks ago, they made the decision and they've picked Kilkeven, the western route. Clearly we knew they were always going to do that. They've now whittled that down to a 1 kilometre corridor which runs across homes, prime agricultural land. It runs across properties which people paid a lot of money for in the last 6 months, and when they conducted their searches, the ones that we all conduct when we buy a property, there was not one notice come back to say that Powerlink, any utility agency or any government agency had an interest over their property. Could you imagine if you bought a house and then found out a week later they were putting a railway line through there next year? I don't think you'd be very happy. So we find ourselves in a situation now where the western route, which runs all the way up the western side of Black Snake Range, we are battling with Powerlink as to where we move forward from here. So the Kilkeven Action Group strategy throughout this entire issue has been lock your gates and do not accept paperwork from Powerlink. And the reason that we're doing that is because we know that Powerlink can only come onto our land if they have served us with the correct paperwork under the Acquisition of Lands Act or the Electricity Act. If they decide they want to come on, and they don't have permission, they haven't served the paperwork, they're trespassing, and we'll call the police. And we've told them that that's what we will do. So we're at a stalemate at the moment, and last week we had a meeting that they attended, and when we asked them if they intended to escalate this to the minister, to have the minister enact his statutory authority to force entry onto our properties, they could not answer that question. So today I stand here before you to tell you this can happen to anyone. Nobody in either of those corridors thought last year that anybody would be coming to take their castle off them or even a slither of the land that their castle sits on. Our government has several pieces of legislation available to them that allow them to take your home. Don't bury your head in the sand. Find out about the powers they've got. And next time when you go to the voting booth, have a think about who you're going to vote for, depending on who says what they're going to use those powers for in the future. So if anybody's got questions about what's going on exactly with this at the moment, you can talk to myself or Jim Wilmot or Shay Rule. We'll be here afterwards. We've now got a glove box guide that we want to get on every single person's fridge so that you know your rights as a landholder and you know what to do when Powerlink or any other government agency is standing at your gate wanting to force their way in. Thank you.
Well done to Katie and to all the team. If you are after any information, there's forms there to fill in. There's a role that you can play in this because, as Katie said, we don't know when it's going to happen to us and we're all vulnerable. So this is where the Community Unity event today, meeting your neighbours, knowing who's sitting beside you, is super important. Jim Wilmot is a long-term defender of the rights of regional communities, standing against government and commercial entities. Inspired by his love of rural Queensland, Jim has led many successful initiatives and has played an active role protecting the rights of farmers and their communities. Jim now leads Property Rights Australia, a grassroots organisation that supports local communities whose property rights are under threat and their voices are not being heard. So make sure we support Jim. Big round of applause, Jim.
Yeah, g'day everyone. Thanks for coming along. Some people also call me Jamie, but that's okay. Before I kick off, I want to ask you a couple of questions. My first question, who here feels they are not fully informed or aware of their private property rights? Raise your hand. Okay, one more question, thank you. Who here has experienced a threat to their private property rights? Raise your hand. Thank you. Look, I'm the chair of Property Rights Australia, PRA. It's a nationally focused organisation with a rich 20-year history, helping regional and rural communities protect their property rights and livelihoods from, the many varied assaults from government and their corporate buddies. We're definitely grassroots, a not-for-profit movement of individuals and families from across Australia, operating to inform people about their property rights and helping communities influence government decision making. We help protect individual private property rights, and we also call out misleading allegations designed to hurt or discredit our rural industries and our livelihoods. We especially work hard to unite with other groups and provide them with essential information. Now, from our 20-year history, I want to just part with you some of the key issues that we see and have found over that time. Now, we see there's a constant, unrelenting erosion of our property rights, particularly in rural and regional areas. Communities are not treated as equal to city populations. Here in regional and rural areas, we are not treated equally. However, when you look at the mainstream narratives, they promote and preach that ethos. Equality, equality. Now, I know there's a couple of politicians here today. To me, there's good and bad politicians. Many politicians that we've found continue to show a total disregard and disrespect to the views and opinions of rural and regional people. When we look at the government consultation processes that have been rolled out over the last 20 years, they haven't improved. They are nothing more than a tick and flick exercise designed to bulldoze through government policy, regulation and infrastructure projects in total disregard to community concerns, values and emotional well-being. Governments simply are not listening to grassroots communities in developing programs and policy. They're not listening to us. Communities like ours are becoming voiceless and forgotten. We have little political capital to influence policy settings. But I come to you with some solutions, some things that we've seen from a property rights perspective over the 20 years of what's worked for communities. We see that communities that have stayed informed, connected and united are communities that are best able to meet these challenges that are thrown at them. As an individual, if you keep informed about your rights as a property owner, know what your rights are, your basic rights. As an individual, look at joining a community group that is frank and fearless and supports people being treated with respect and fairness. As an individual, help build your community's capacity to stand up, to have a voice, to listen, to be listened to. We must buffer ourselves to protect ourselves from future challenges. There are many people here today wondering, what can I do? How can I play a part? How can I help protect my community? The answer is to join groups that brings communities together, not to tear them apart. Support politicians that don't just look good, they actually do good. They actually walk the talk. The other thing is, join groups like Property Rights Australia. And that's a selfish plug. Now, we have stood with the communities over the last 20 years to ensure landholder rights were protected against coal seam gas companies in Western Queensland. We have fought against unjust environmental regulation and legislation that erodes property rights, but it's also bad for the environment. We have stood with communities against unjust and misleading government allegations that are made to manipulate mainstream public sentiment to gain some political advantage. And we are standing here today with the community action groups like the Kingaroy Action Group, the Widgie Say No to Lines Group, the Mary River Action Group, against the high voltage Powerline corridors and the renewable energy developments in the Gympie region right here, right now. Now, before I finish up, look, we've got some membership forms available from Chris Green here at the front. We've also got those landholder guides that we have developed for people to know their rights when they're approached by the Powerlinks of the world, other government corporations of the world. We've got a conference here at the Gympie Pavilion on the 9th and 10th of June. Come and be informed about your property rights and hear from the guest speakers who have stood up to this overreach of governments trying to take their land and their corporations through their communities to protect their property rights. Thank you. That's all I've got for you today. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Jim. I just want to reiterate that at the Pavilion, the 9th and 10th of June, it starts at 10 o'clock. And make sure you sign up and support the group, because like I said, we don't know when it's going to happen to us. Up next, we've got a brave, amazing doctor, Dr. Andrew McIntyre. Andrew is a consultant gastroenterologist trained in Princess Alexandra Hospital and has been practicing on the Sunshine Coast since the early 90s. Dr. Andrew was mandated out of practice in 2021 because of the Chief Health Officer vaccine mandate. He became active member of AMPS and Doctors Against Mandates, who have challenged the Chief Health Officer's mandate, which is now dropped. We've also got the Q Health vaccine mandates by the Supreme Court judicial reviews happening. Andrew is still unable to admit patients to hospital, but he is working in a limited capacity in his own centre. Dr. Andrew McIntyre is an advocate of the early treatment for COVID and respect for human rights. So I think we deserve an extra special big round of applause for Dr. Andrew McIntyre. Thank you.
run Budrum Gastroenterology Centre on the Sunshine Coast since the early 90s. And as said, I was mandated out because of the vaccine mandate. But because we're a private centre and this is fairly critical, we actually kept half of our unvaxxed nurses in employment using telephone things. And when the CHO mandate dropped, which incidentally was 10 days after we submitted all our affidavits, the CHO mandate was dropped 10 days after we submitted all our affidavits in regards to evidence against the mandates. So we would like to claim that, but it's hard to be sure. We currently have a judicial review active against the Queensland Health mandates, which persist. They're also enforced by private hospitals, which are all corporate and very large, and I think as a community you need to look at developing some locally owned, locally run health facilities where you can make decisions like we made to keep unvaccinated staff employed. So that's my message, and I hear a lot of good things about that in terms of local things. One of the things that I have been involved in for many years is low-carb nutrition, and that is very positive on meat. I think the best meal you can ever have is steak and eggs. And I've seen the anti-meat agenda going for pre-COVID. So I've actually got 2 cattle farms now and are trying to push back against that as well. And I think keeping your food local, staying out of the big supermarkets, shopping around the edge of the store and avoiding all processed food is actually the best health thing you can do, and it is the best treatment to prevent your risk of COVID, in fact. So there are a lot of doctors who are opposed to all of this. A lot of them have been deregistered. For some reason I haven't. I made an APRA complaint against the Chief Health Officer for misinformation, and they just said, oh, we've made him aware that he was wrong, but it was never corrected. And that was in regards to ivermectin, where he said there was no positive clinical trials, which was a total lie at the time. So I think my message really is to work on your local food suppliers because they are under threat, to try and divorce yourself from the large corporate players. Perhaps as a co-op set up a medical centre that actually allows people who don't believe in all this rubbish to actually work when it's possible, because that is the only thing that's actually saved us. And all of the big corporate players are continuing mandates. So we're trying to address that. We're currently under threat from Queensland Health, who are going for costs to dismiss our case as some sort of frivolous activity. I've just recently read like 400 survey results from Queensland Health employees, and I'm sure you can add teachers to that, and they're absolutely horrendous what has happened to the people who've been mandated out. And they were actually right. If you're looking for the science, go to the AMPS website, amps.redunion.com. There's a number of presentations there. We've got one tonight in Coolum, which I have to get back to present at, which covers the science. I mean, we have to stick by the best available science, and the best available science is this vaccine is unsafe and ineffective. There is no doubt. Australia's all-cause mortality has gone up 20%. That started pre-COVID peak in December. The correlation with the vaccination around the world is enormously strong. Correlation does not equal causation, but there's a set of criteria called the Bradford Hill criteria, which are things like dose response, timing and things like that. And it satisfies the requirements, and that is really how they convicted smoking and lung cancer, is using Bradford Hill criteria. So when you use those criteria, the Western world, there is very little doubt that this increased all-cause mortality is at least partially related to the vaccine, and I think if you've had the vaccine, just don't get any more. And the current ATAGI recommendations for anyone under 65 not to get boosted. But I heard on the radio on the way up, they're still advertising it. So they're actually going against the ATAGI recommendations, which I don't totally support, but that is their current position. So I think you need to learn about this yourself. You need to develop local resources, which is what I see is happening. And you need to ditch processed food and eat local, and meat, eggs and green vegetables should be the basis of your diet. And if you do that, your risk of these things will be a lot less. The other thing to look into, I can't really cover it, hopefully Malcolm Roberts might, is there's a WHO treaty on the books, which all the federal politicians seem keen to sign, and that includes mandated vaccines, mandated monitoring, mandated everything. And it's really quite horrific. So, you know, we need local decisions, not WHO mandated vaccines. And if you look into those recommendations, they are actually horrific. Countries can't even talk to each other about what's going on. Everything has to go through the WHO. And I mean, you may not realise that Tedros declared a pandemic for monkeypox, even though the committee that he appointed to make those decisions recommended against it. So we have one person dictating to the world, and the treaty would give them the right to mandate treatments for everyone in the community, to lock them down, to do all these things. It really is quite a horrific power takeover that's being proposed, and within this country most of the politicians seem to be blissfully unaware or complicit. I don't know which one, but we do need to stand up to that. People need the right to make their own health decisions. That is a fundamental human right. So it really doesn't matter whether it works or not. It doesn't stop transmission, so the mandates were never justified. But even if it did, people have a right to make their own health decisions, and that's critical. So that's my message for the day. And if you want to look at some of the science and some of the evidence, go to amps.redunion.com.au, and they have lots of presentations and things that we've done to try and cover that. And we do have some leaflets over in the tent about the Doctors Against Mandates. We've spent several $100,000 already, so I've probably spent tens of thousands on it. So we certainly appreciate any support, because we're being threatened with costs to dismiss this thing, so I'm sure they'll try and spend as much as they possibly can. But what we need also is judges to feel that they can't just dismiss these things, that there is a little bit of public outrage and they need to start respecting that. So that's important change, because the courts have not been terribly good on this front. But if we're intimidated out of trying, there's no way we can possibly win. So that's important that we do actually try, because there's no way in the world Queensland Health want the evidence presented in court. They're sending out letters, and I'm sure it's the same for education, really making statements that are so easily proved to be false. Some as little as a month ago saying that it prevents transmission, it does all these things. And I mean, Bill Gates acknowledges that it doesn't prevent transmission. So that's where we're at. Queensland Health are, they're brutal. They have done terrible things to their staff, and they really don't seem to care at all. And in fact, if you want it to be evidence-based, it's the health workers who've had no vaccine and COVID who are actually the safest, and virtually everyone's had COVID these days. Anyway, I'll probably leave it there if you want to look at the science and that. We've got lots of videos on the AMPS website, and we'll continue to fight it, because I think this really is an existential threat to the whole of society, really, if we're completely controlled by Tedros and the WHO and the UN. So we need people to make individualised decisions. Anyway, thanks everyone. Thank you.
What a hero, like many doctors and nurses out there that stood their ground. So another round of applause. Or start drawing the prize. Up next, We've got somebody who you're going to have to send lots of love to. Michael Pratt. Michael is one of the many Australians who has been adversely impacted by the COVID vaccine. Prior to his vaccination, he was fit and healthy, a small business owner and father of one. Since his vaccination, he has had several adverse health issues, which continue to impact his ability to live life as he knows it. Michael has had to make many adjustments to his business and home life. So, big heartfelt round of applause for Michael.
Thanks, guys. The reason I'm here is because my journey started 21 months ago on the 26th of August 21. I had a second Pfizer vaccine, and within 24 hours I started having problems from that vaccine. The original diagnosis was Guillain-Barré, and I was paralysed from the neck down within 4 days of having the vaccination. From that, I spent 4.5 weeks in SKU. I believe I'm one of the lucky ones. I wasn't ventilated, so I was a day off being ventilated, and I'd actually turned the corner. When I was there, what I found out though was that there was a reluctance for the staff to report any injuries associated with the vaccine, and they said to me that there was a ward of people that were not as badly affected as I was, but they were not reporting a lot of the incidents regarding the vaccine, which resulted in me reporting it to the TGA. Since the vaccine though, I've had to learn to walk again, basically do everything, you know, from basic house duties to toileting, the whole lot. It's like motor neurone disease, which my brother died from a couple of years ago, and initially I thought that I had motor neurone and that I was going to be done and dusted within a couple of weeks. I just have had testing in this last week, and I'm still less than 50% in my hands and my feet. My bottom half of my arms and my legs, so from my elbows down and knees down, is very weak. It's a continual journey, so for me, you know, just doing basic tasks takes a lot of effort. Fatigue is chronic. I work 2 days a week. I used to work 6.5 or 5.5 days a week. You know, I sleep, Wednesday's a sleep day for me now, so until about 2 o'clock. But what I'm finding is that it's not just the Guillain-Barré, it's the other things that are now occurring. So 6 months after Guillain-Barré, I've developed really bad eczema, which skin tests have actually indicated that that's caused from the vaccine. About 6-7 months ago, I started having stomach issues, and I'm now gluten intolerant. So the vaccine just keeps giving, is what I'm finding, and you know, you sort of think you're over one hurdle and then you have the next. You know, like, it's impacted everything. We had cattle, had about 120 head, we now have 18. I can't run, I struggle to walk on uneven surfaces. If I tip over, I'm like a turtle on my back. You know, it's all those things that you take for granted. You know, basic toileting stuff, you take it for granted until you realise that you can't do it. And some of those things I still struggle with 20 months later. So I just wanted to share my story so that people know, you know, I'm pro-vac, but more importantly, I'm pro-choice. I think everyone should have the right to choose what they put in their body. And in my case, I felt I was forced because of government regs and mandates, and we had customers that wouldn't allow us or anyone from our business on site. And as a small business owner, I didn't feel I had the right to ask my staff to have it. I was the first person in our business to have it, and I was the only one that had it. Everyone else just said no way because of my reaction to it. But I think, you know, it's important that we get out there and tell people what these things are doing, because I found when I first came out, every time you try to put something out there, it was shut down by media and stuff like that. So, you know, you'd put something on Facebook, you'd look the next morning and it'd be gone, you know, and things like that. So they didn't want people to know the impact of these vaccines and that people were having. So, you know, I just wanted to share my story. You know, I hope people get something from that. You know, like I said, we need to be given the choice about whether we have these things or not. So, and I think regardless of whether you have it or not have it, that's your personal choice. And whatever your decision is, you take whatever consequences come from that. So that's all I've got to say. Thank you guys for listening.
Heartbreaking, so many stories out there. So make sure while you're here, you go over to the Forest of the Fallen and just see the damage that has been done. Yeah, and blessings to you. Thank you for being here. Big round of applause. Heroes come in all forms, and we don't know sometimes if you're up, but yeah, so thanks, Michael. So up next we have Tom Kendall from Permaculture. So we wanted to throw different elements in today because we want to raise awareness, but at the same time it's about solutions, and we want to make sure that everyone goes away with something today. And I personally am loving the farming, as I think many people here are. So Tom Kendall from Permaculture, he's an experienced an experienced farmer of close to 50 years, descending from a family of farmers. He's been a permaculture teacher and a consultant since 2008. Tom and his wife Zaya, hopefully I've pronounced that right, founded PermEco, formerly Permaculture Research Institute Sunshine Coast, in 2012. Tom is a wealth of knowledge and wisdom. So round of applause for Tom. And let's hear what he's got to say. Now, I've got to fix this up, and you've got to speak right in.
Hello everyone. Thanks for this opportunity to be here. It's been quite interesting listening to the speakers so far, and so there's quite a bit of issue with the tenure of your land, and that's been brought forward by what people have been saying. The area that I work in is what you do with the land when you have that secure tenure. So as an advisor and a consultant, that's my area of expertise. And I really love doing that. And so if you're interested in getting your property to work for you instead of you working for the property, I can help you out there. So pretty much I'm doing a bit of a plug for myself today. But the information I'd really like to hand over is, so permaculture, what is permaculture? So it's about permanent agriculture or permanent culture. And the topics that we've been coming up with today is actually permaculture. It's how your society functions. That's part of permaculture as well. Permaculture is much, much more than gardening, which is what a lot of people think it's about. And it's about your whole, everything that you do in design. It's a permaculture design. I don't have a permaculture garden, I have a permaculture design garden. And then we need a permaculture design community. And so today's great. It's really awesome to see here. I was uncertain of the turnout that would be here today, and I felt like a bit of a random choice for me to come here today, and I'm really, really glad I did, to see and hear what's been going on. Katie was talking about the power lines. So something that I am very passionate about is to be responsible for your actions. Every action has a reaction. So it's a bit of a quandary that we don't want the power lines, but we want the power. So what is my responsibility with power? I have a methane gas biodigester. I do have solar panels, but I'm trying to get the money together at the moment so that instead of putting on a bigger solar system, because my solar system isn't quite adequate, I'm trying to get the money together to purchase a much more efficient freezer to put my steak in from my cows that I grow on my property. And I grow them responsibly with the regenerative, we like that new word, regenerative agriculture at the moment, or regenerative grazing. So I'm responsible how I graze my cattle, to the point that I'm trying to get more plants per square metre, so that when it rains heavy, because we do get heavy rain, I live in Kinkin, and we get really heavy rain, and that rain's getting heavier and heavier as of the event that we had last March last year, and a lot of water, like something like 9 million litres of water tried to get off my property in 2 hours, and I lost organic matter, but I lost very little soil, and that's my design of running the cows on contour with swales. The swales are water management systems. My objective to myself, yes, I did lose some soil. I did lose, the water that left my property had a lot of colour in it because there was a few little breaches in my system. My objective is, if we have an event like March last year, late February, early March last year, which we will get, of course, and probably worse, my challenge to myself is when the water leaves my property, which will be 9 million litres or 10 million litres, whatever it's going to be, in that short period of time, it's not allowed to have any soil in it, and preferably not any organic matter. So I've got to reassess my system, because I did lose a bit of soil and I did lose a lot of organic matter. The organic matter is okay because I've designed a system that grows a lot of organic matter in its design. So the point I'm trying to put across here is are you being responsible for everything that you do? I started off talking about the freezer. So I'm trying to get a freezer that's going to use less electricity. So it's much more efficient than these throw out pretty quickly new design fridges and freezers. We're a crazy people. So you know that on your fridge, when you buy a new fridge, there's that thing on it, it's got half a dial thing on there, and it's got this red thing on it. Yeah, and if it's really, really efficient, the red would be right around here, but they're never right around here. Why is that? Why is it up here somewhere on that dial? It's because you want a fridge that's small on the outside and big on the inside. You, the consumer, wants a fridge that's small on the outside but big on the inside. So it doesn't take up so much room in your kitchen, but you can get as much stuff in it as you can. So, and nowadays, the freezer compartment actually cools the fridge. So the air in the cold air in the freezer's got to go down into the fridge. So that means you're not allowed to have your freezer frost up, otherwise the air can't get down to the fridge. So in your freezer, there's a heater to stop it frosting up. You've got a heater in your freezer, and it runs at 200 watts or something like that, where your fridge runs around 120 watts. And why is that in there? Because you, the consumer, so I'm pointing fingers here, me as well, you, the consumer, don't like defrosting the freezer. So now there's fridges and freezers that have that system built in. That's why the dial is up there and not down there. So I'm going to buy a fridge and I'm going to buy a freezer that the dial's around there. And I don't care if it's big on the outside. Why is it smaller on the outside? Because they put the insulation thinner and thinner. So then it's less efficient. And it's the consumer that's created that. So we need to be responsible for our actions. For me to buy the freezer that I want, it's going to cost me about $2,500. It's taken me a while to put that money together. But I'm going to do it because I want to be responsible. I don't want to put on a bigger solar system. I want to put on a smaller solar system. Oh, that's my roundup. Okay, I've got time to do the plugs. So we run Permaculture, which is a word coined for permanently productive ecosystems. So that's a play on the words of Bill Mollison. For us to live and have an economy from our land, we need agriculturally productive ecosystems. When you think of an ecosystem, you think of a forest. Our agriculture needs to be an ecosystem, not a monoculture. Monoculture just destroys the ecosystem, and monoculture destroys your community. Because you go up in economies of scale, and the bigger you get, the more people you push out, and there goes your community, and you've got a dead village. So, I'm off again, aren't I? Sorry about that. So we run courses at our property in Kinkin. In September, we got a 2-week PDC, the Permaculture Design Certificate course. That's a live-in residential course. Goes for 2 weeks, and we'll go through the whole manual, Bill Mollison's manual, the 14 chapters. And the last chapter on that is about your community. It's about the social side of things. It's about how you set up so you have secure land tenure. So we go through some of the topics that are coming through today, a lot of the topics. And I'm in the tent over there next to the orange tent, just beside that. So if you want to have a chat with me, I'll be over there, and I'm quite willing to have a chat, and we can get into some in-depth discussions. Thanks for your time, everyone. Appreciate being here.
Thanks, Tom. Awesome. So, as I said earlier, I'm now a farmer, which has been so cool. And what I've got to say is I love getting my hands dirty. I was going to do a post and go, are these the nails you want? Yes. Or are you going to have long, delicate, manicured ones? Well, I've got these ones these days. Loving it. Up next, we've got our very special guest speaker. And I met this man in October 2019. And I went to Parliament House, and he was kind enough to give me a voice. And we sat there, and at the time, my concerns were the over-vaccination of our children and the what I call the mass drugging agenda. And he was kind enough to give us a voice when no other politician would. Nobody wanted to hear, nobody wanted to know. And so I've watched Malcom and been a fan for many years. And I'm so pleased he's here today to grace us with his amazing presence. So Malcom was first elected in 2016. He's for the people, and he's standing with One Nation. But big round of applause.
Well, look at this. This is the first time I haven't had to adjust the microphone downwards. First time ever. I want to thank everyone for being here today. It's marvellous to see you, because our country is at stake, and you're the solution, and I mean that sincerely. I also want to thank the organisers and our fellow speakers, especially Michael Pratt. Safe and effective? Bullshit. But after 3 years of negativity, I want to give you some good news. Things are changing in Canberra. We've had 3 heads resign, head of the TGA, head of the Health Department, and the previous Health Minister gone. And the others are under pressure. We've also had a change of tone in the Senate. Pauline and I introduced the concept of a Royal Commission into COVID mismanagement, deceit, and we reintroduced it again last week. And every single party spoke either in for it or not against it. The ones who weren't in favour of it said when in the future sometime. So that's a big change. And ivermectin is now legal again. Did anyone see the science change? I didn't. The same thing is now legal. And the media is now talking about injection deaths. Injection deaths, that didn't happen 6 months before. But I want to talk about something very positive. Human progress since 1850, the Industrial Revolution. The whales and the trees of this world are indebted to and grateful for coal, oil and natural gas, because we no longer burn trees for fuel, no longer kill whales for lighting at night. Do you know that as a result of hydrocarbon fuels, our standard of living is now so high that a person on welfare in this country, isn't this marvellous news? A person of welfare in this country lives a longer, safer, more secure, easier, more productive life than a king or queen did 200 years ago. That is remarkable, and it's due to 3 things: hydrocarbon fuels, coal, oil and natural gas, human care and human creativity. Look at this. We would not have dreamt of this just 100 years ago. We would not have dreamt of it. Riding around in cars, wouldn't have dreamt of it 130 years ago. That's where we've come. And it lifted us out of feudalism, controlled by a few who controlled the land and the resources, controlled the laws. That's what we lifted out of. Science liberated us and gave us the freedom, not only that is our birthright, but that is essential for human progress. We have been scratching around, our ancestors scratching around for thousands of years, hundreds of thousands of years, and in just 170 years, look at us now, liberated. We were liberated from feudalism. So I'm very, very proud of being human, extremely proud of being human. We are a wonderful species, but we've been fed a crock. For the last 40 years, various institutions, including the United Nations, the World Economic Forum and the Club of Rome, have told us that humans are irresponsible, greedy, rapacious, uncaring. Nothing could be further from the truth. They've indoctrinated our kids. Now they're increasing that. But there's not one person here who would be here if it hadn't been for care. Not one person. I came out of my mum even shorter than I am now, about that long. Completely helpless, like every one of us. Completely helpless. Not just for a few days, a few hours, but years. That is remarkable, because the thing that defines our species is our creativity, our intellect, and our care. Not just for our babies, but our care for the environment. The Greens are telling us bullshit. There's not a single farmer who doesn't care for his environment or her environment. Yep, there are some evil people. Hitler, Stalin, Maurice Strong from the United Nations, who's responsible for 40 to 50 million deaths. Mao Zedong from China. Morrison, Palaszczuk and the other premiers for what they've done in the last 3 years. That's inhuman. And it was evil. But that brings the other side of humanity, the ego. We all formed the ego in our early years before we had a rational intellect, before we knew much about the world. In my case, I formed this entity called Malcolm Roberts. That ego is stronger in some than in others. And in people like Hitler, Maurice Strong from the United Nations, Mao Zedong, Morrison, it's stronger than most people. And they seek control. Ego seeks control and power and wealth. And that's what we've got to live with. If you look at COVID, we had digital passports, inhuman, forcing people to be injected with a toxin that has not been tested. I get pissed off when I think about this. Restrictions that stopped you seeing your grandparents, seeing your parents, going to work, contributing to society. We had Big Pharma being transferred $8 billion in wealth from us, the taxpayer, for things that were not tested and that have since been found to be killers. All in the name of control and dollars. That's what they did it for. We've got globalist predators who want control. And always beneath control, and this isn't part of the encouraging news, always beneath control there is fear. They fear us. And I'll give you some more news about that in a minute. But who are these globalist predators? The United Nations World Health Organization. They were formed to be the predators' vehicles. They were not formed for peace. They're incompetent, dishonest, and deceitful. The IMF, the United States Federal Reserve Bank, the World Economic Forum, the World Bank, Club of Rome. And here's the funny thing. They blame humans for the problems they created. They fabricated COVID. Well, COVID's real, but the mass indoctrination is not real. Climate change is bullshit. There's no evidence for it. And what they're doing is they're creating problems and blaming it on humans. And then what's their answer? More government. Who makes up government? Humans. What they want to do is take the power of a democracy off us and give it to a select few who look after people like Pfizer. The United Nations World Health Organization is funded in order by America, Germany, Bill Gates. 80% of their funding comes from private individuals. And where do they invest their money? Injections. So they create problems to try and create a need for control, and then they hand the problems over to globalists and our governments because humans cannot be trusted. So they entrust just a select few. And those few you cannot trust. We're winning. The cash ban bill was introduced by the by the Liberal Party in the previous Parliament. The Labor Party backed it through the lower house. In the Senate, I stopped it. My office stopped it. How did we do it? Very simple. We only had two of us in the upper house, Pauline and myself. We talked to the grassroots members of the Liberal Party and the Labor Party. They were so incensed, they put pressure on their MPs to stop it in the Senate. It was consigned to a committee in the Senate, and after a few months I moved a motion banning it, getting rid of it off the books, and we've got it through the Senate to get it out of the Parliament. But they are relentless, and because I'll get onto the topic that we're talking about here. The digital identity was also introduced by Scott Morrison's Liberal Party. The digital identity wants to collect your information, health information, Facebook, social media information, banking information, transactions, travel, what you say and what you do not say on social media. They want to collect all that and then sell it to a foreign corporation. And then that corporation does not have to operate within our laws of privacy. That corporation can then sell, if you want your health information, you will pay for it to that foreign corporation. They will use that information to set up a digital currency. The digital identity is already talking about cashless again. They won't stop unless we stop them for good. We can stop them for good. So that's cashless society brings in digital currency. So they've got digital information about everything in your life, everything. Then they tie it to currency. Then they ban cash. And then if they get away with it, if we let them, then they set up a social credit system. Social credit system says, you've got a four-wheel drive, no housing loan for you. You just said this on Facebook, your digital income comes down. That's what they're setting for. And these things are not unheard of. They're in place in various parts of the world right now. We've also got then smart cities. Smart cities are being set up by the United Nations and World Economic Forum. What they're trying to do is limit people's travel, limit what you do, where you live, how you live, what you spend your money on. You'll be living in a box. You won't have a car, and everything about your property will be gone. It will not be yours. You've heard the saying, you'll own nothing and be happy. Bullshit. So my office outed the World Health Organization's international health regulations, and we'll keep putting pressure on them. The World Economic Forum dared to say that this country, our country, is racist, extremist, homophobic, and transgender-phobic, whatever it is. And they mentioned one nation as being the prime suspects. Thank you! That's something that Pauline and I wear the badge of honour. They named us because we're getting at them. Tedros, who's in charge of the World Health Organization, is a terrorist, a dishonest thief and terrorist. What we need to do, though, is forgive these people. Now, that doesn't mean let them go. We still hold them accountable. But forgiveness means you don't make value judgments about them. And I mean this sincerely. We have to get after them, hold them accountable, including the bastards in Canberra. We'll continue in Senate estimates and in the Senate. But what we have to do is forgive them. These people are doing the best they can. They don't know any better. They think it's okay to kill people. They honestly think they're doing the right thing. So what we've got to do is forgive that aspect, because forgiveness then removes the hate within ourselves. And when we hate, we hurt ourselves. We need people in Australia to be clear-thinking, strong in heart, and free of hate. We need to be united and strong. One of the tactics of these people is to divide and to conquer. Stay united. We need to get back to basics on cost of living. And I say this because we won't have a community if we don't have strong cost of living factors. Energy, that's primary. We need to restore science to end the climate change fraud. We need to do tax reform, significant tax reform to make foreigners pay their fair share. Economic management needs to be improved. Cut immigration to net zero and drop the price of houses. We need security, restore property rights, restore values. Check the immigration quality that's coming in. Do they comply with Australian values? Protect our family. These are all part of building community. But I just wanted to let you know that we have got your back. There's only a couple of us, but we have got your back in Federal Parliament. But we need you to support us. We work for the people. You pay my wages. I represent you. So my call to action is very simple. Practice true forgiveness. It's bloody hard to do, I can tell you, especially with your loved ones. Because it gives us personal strength. That we need that. We need strong Australians. Question and speak out on the facts. Come to sessions like this. Share the facts with your friends, with your neighbours, with your work colleagues, with your social colleagues. We need you to build community. Only the people in a community can build community. I can't give you lessons on that. We need you to volunteer at elections. We need you to vote for a growing party. Because it's not the United Nations that's doing this to this country. It's the bastards in Canberra from Liberal and Labor and Nationals and the Greens who do it to us by adopting United Nations policies without telling the people. That's the score. We are the sovereigns of this country. The people of this country are in charge of the Constitution. There's no higher authority. We are not a monarchy, we are a constitutional monarchy. The King or Queen serves the people by serving the Constitution. That is fact. The only people who can change the Constitution are the people. The only people who can choose the government are the people. We have to start doing our jobs, get better people into Parliament, and then hold them accountable. 1900s to 1920, the country with the highest per capita income in the world, number one, was Australia. Ours is the only country in the world in which the Constitution was voted for by the people. We need to work together. Pauline Hanson called out the United Nations in 1996, 27 years ago. I called for an exit from the United Nations in 2016. We've got to stop these bureaucrats and politicians in Canberra from selling us out. Be very proud of being human. My aim is to restore our country and our planet for humans to abound and flourish. That is why we're here. We are not inferior to fungus, critters. We look after the environment, but number one on this species and on the species list is humans. We have one planet, we have one flag, we are one community, we are one nation. And thank you for being here.
Sorry, I had to do it. Another big round of applause for Malcolm Roberts. I think the beauty of it is when one person stands, more follow. And that's what's happening. We're seeing it with the politicians in Parliament, and that's what we need. So when there's a voice, it just gets bigger and bigger. So we need to make sure we support that voice. Speaking of that, up next we have our local federal MP for Wide Bay, Lou O'Brien. So Lou was elected as a member of the House of Representatives in 2016, representing Wide Bay. So he represents us. So if you want to talk to somebody, this is the man to talk to. He sits with the National Party, which is something I just learned. I actually didn't realise that. So Lou's actually from the National Party, and obviously they sit with the Liberal Party. So it's a coalition with the Liberal Party. So that was something I've just learned. So big round of applause for Lou O'Brien.
Thank you very much. Thanks, Malcolm. I'll just lift this up, mate. But Look, Malcolm, it's great to hear him in full flight there. I think he might have got more than 7 minutes, but that's okay. I'm happy with that. It was all well worth listening, and I won't torture you with 7 minutes. I intend to certainly be the guest listener, not so much the guest speaker. It is a privilege to be here, and I thank the organisers who put this together. There is a diversity of views here, and that is wonderful, and that is what Australia is about. By way of introduction to those who don't know me, I have been in Parliament for a while. Within the first year of getting there, I told Malcolm Turnbull I wasn't happy with what was happening in the financial services sector and brought on a Royal Commission into the banks. I also told Scott Morrison I wasn't happy with what was going on and that I'd crossed the floor to bring on a Royal Commission into veteran suicide. And in saying that, I want to acknowledge today any first responders and veterans who are in the crowd. And I also want to acknowledge and pay my respects to the taxpayers that make our wonderful society happen. As I said, I'm here as a guest listener because this is about free speech. And during the COVID issues that we're hearing about today, but there were massive problems. And I look at the Forest of the Fallen over there, and I can't help but think, and I've said this publicly before, if there's an event like there was where we were locked down and had our freedoms taken away from us, we do need an independent inquiry to look at why it happened, how it happened, and who was responsible. That needs to be independent from government, and I'm calling on the government, as I've done before, to have a Royal Commission into the handling of COVID. When things got out of control in Canberra, and Craig Kelly, a friend of mine, wanted to have a debate on what was happening, I crossed the floor to support him. Me and George Christensen were the only ones. I looked across the other side and I saw the entire opposition at the time and the entire government standing there, and I felt pretty ordinary because all I was asking for was a debate. Free speech, what you're here today about. Now, I want to just quickly, I said I wasn't going to talk long, but I am a politician, so you can't always take what I say as fair dinkum. So, The Voice. My kids were born on that hill, in the Gympie Hospital. They're Australian citizens. Every Australian citizen is equal and should be equal. And any change to our constitution that gives preference to race is wrong, and it won't help disadvantage in our Aboriginal communities, which we need to do. We need to do as much as we can to help them, but this voice is wrong. It's un-Australian. Self-determination happens at an individual level. When you determine that you're going to do the right thing and things go well because you do it. Self-determination doesn't come around because of bigger government. It's individual responsibility, and we do need to help people. We need to give people that are disadvantaged of all races, of all genders, all Australians, all Australian citizens need help if they are disadvantaged. But we cannot be dividing the nation. It is bad for all of us. There's a few speakers today that have spoken about property rights, and I support them 100%. I am opposed to the Barumba pumped hydro. I'm opposed to the 27,000 kilometres of misery that is the rewiring the nation policy. And that's what it is. This is the entree. This is the entree of what we're going to face under these ridiculously unviable and reckless renewable policies that are being put forward at the moment. Before the last election, I stated my position. I am not for net zero by 2050. I am not for 50% renewable energy. I am for cheap, reliable energy that maintains our first world living standard and that we deserve as Australians. And I will support you and your right as private property owners to stop government coming in and taking that away. I'm not going to say any more because I think it's all been said before me, but I just want to say thank you so much for coming along. I know we've got different views. There's people in this crowd that won't agree with me, and there's people who would, but you've got a right as an Australian citizen to say what you feel is right, and my door's open to all Australian citizens, so God save the King and God bless.
Thank you, Lou. And I just pointed out, he turned up, hey? Another round of applause for Lou, because he's a politician that actually showed up. Like, credit to him. I just want to say too, I am going to grab his phone number, so we will be making appointments. So anybody out there who wants appointments, we'll go see Lou, hey? So we've had an amazing lineup of speakers today, and I have to say I've done a lot of events over the years. We've invited media, we've invited politicians, we've invited pretty much everyone, and I have to say it's a bit of a rarity that A, media come, and that B, politicians rock up. So I have to say I'm pretty proud, and certainly proud of Gympie for actually having the local politician come. Up next we've got the local mayor, and we've had Malcom Roberts, and we've got media. So how good's that? Well done, Gympie. As I said, up next we have Mayor Glenn Hartwig, and we threw this together just really briefly before. And I got the gist that he's a bit of a jack of all trades. That's kind of what we said. So he's previously been a councillor. He's now mayor of Gympie. He's an ex-business owner, farmer, miner, husband, father of three, stepfather of three. And I think the quote that got me the most that he said was, "Don't judge a book by its cover." So big round of applause for Glenn. Thank you.
It's a wonderful town when you were best mates with Mr. Bray's son at school, so it's a great community we have here. I've known him for many years. I just said it's a wonderful, wonderful town to live in. I was best mates with Jason, Mr. Bray's son at school, so it's a great community we have where we get to know one another and we get to come back and live here. Why I thought don't judge a book by its cover is, you know, people often in my role, you assume they have certain views on things, and particularly in local government, the state has stringent legislation in relation to what we can say and what we can't say. And today, one of the reasons I'm here is to support free speech and to support the ability of people to have differing opinions and not be criticised or hindered in their life because they have a differing opinion. What I see in our world is that we've actually lost the ability, or whether it's social media or a lack of education, to have a conversation with other people and agree to disagree. It's okay if we don't agree on something, but we shouldn't look down on them and see them as any less. We should appreciate the fact that we live in a world where we support and encourage differing opinions, because today's opinion that is promoted as fact is often found out to be a little bit of a falsehood not that long down the track. And I've seen, particularly over the last 3 years, a strong step away from allowing people to speak. And when you go on social media and you put an opinion up or a view that's different to what the mainstream want, they simply want to bully you into agreeing with them. And that's not democracy. And that is not the community that we live in Gympie, but it is certainly the community that you see right around the country. It's scary. It's scary to think what my children will bring to this world when they have kids. What are the consequences for the children of the future in terms of free speech? And I know it's not an exciting topic that will actually, get people out of their chairs, but contemplate it for a long period of time, because the ramifications, if you don't encourage people to have a differing opinion, means that our society dissolves. And the freedoms that we take for granted dissolve along with it. It's great to see everyone here. As a council, we welcome differing views, differing opinions, and we welcome events like this where people can come together. I'm sure all of you don't agree on everything, but you have the freedom to express that and walk away knowing that you were heard, even if people didn't agree. It's great to be in a community where you can come along, and I'm sure we won't agree on everything, but we still treat each other with enough decency and respect that we can have these conversations. Because out there in parts of the world, that doesn't happen. I think we should work tirelessly to protect that, because you don't want grandkids coming into a world where they don't have freedom to express their opinion or their views. And that gets undermined and whined away till they have absolutely nothing left. If you don't have the freedom to express yourself without being belittled and bullied into a particular view, you won't have property rights, you won't have freedom to move, you will simply follow George Orwell's book, 1987. And I read that at school, and it had a massive, 1984, wasn't it? Yeah, I did read. It had a massive impact on me. I also remember when I was in primary school, nuclear war was the thing that scared the living daylights out of me. I used to go to sleep at night because the teachers in the education department talked so much about nuclear holocaust. Has anything changed? What have we seen with the last 3 years? Do this or you'll die. Follow the crowd or you'll end up dead. We have to look back in history to understand what is occurring now and what will occur in the future. And it's important that people remain vigilant and have events like this. Come out, spend some time with each other, have some conversations. Go back to something old school. Have a conversation. Who would have thought that, everything's done online now, where people use their thumbs more than their mouth, or they use their eyes more than their ears. We need to get back to those simple, basic things that set up the foundation of what was the greatest country on earth. And that greatness was around the freedoms and the privileges that we had. And men and women went overseas to foreign countries, not to defend our land in terms of where we are, but to stop tyranny in other areas. And they sacrificed a lot so that we could ensure that we had those freedoms here. And while we may not have to fight as they have fought in a physical sense, we should remain vigilant. Very grateful I had a father that taught me to be respectful of government and authority, but respectfully question. Just because the government says it doesn't necessarily mean it's true. Just because medicine says it doesn't mean it's true. And just because science says it doesn't mean it's true. Thalidomide, tobacco. How long was science and medicine saying that there was no issue with tobacco? You won't die from it. So we have to question respectfully. But be vigilant. And look, I've got the cue. Thank you for coming today. I hope you have more of these events. I think it's great that we have differing opinions and we can share it respectfully with one another.
Cheers. Thank you, Glenn. I do have to do a bit of a shout out. So when COVID hit, there was a business meeting at Chatsworth Hall where 500 people rocked up. Some of you would have been there for it. Glenn did attend that meeting. And again, when we spoke to different people around Australia, again, their politicians, their councillors were absolutely nowhere to be found. So again, credit where credit's due there. So thanks, Glenn. So we're up to the last speaker. Woo! And amazing day with so many amazing speakers. So we've saved the best for last. Sorry, Malcolm. Sorry, everyone else. So we've got Craig McManus from My Place Gympie. Yeah? A lot of people know Craig here in Gympie. He's been very active. So Craig has a long history of working with community. Following the record floods in 2022, Craig assisted in the Flood Recovery Hub with many like-minded people helping to support the greater Gympie community. After the floods, Craig recognised that there was a need for long-term support and to bring the broader community together. This was the beginning of My Place Gympie. The purpose of My Place Gympie is to unite community and develop a system that is designed for the people, by the people. So here's the powerhouse right here. So big round of applause for Craig.
That's great, thank you. Well, thank you very much everyone for coming. This is what we've been needing for 3 years. For 3 years, government and media have been directing and telling us what we can and can't do. See the sign on the top of the flag tent? What does it say? We as the people. We as the people have the power. Malcolm said it. When we stand up and tell government what we demand of them, they have to listen. And the thing that we've been able to do in Gympie is in the floods last year, our community stood up. We had the flood hubs helping community. We did not need any level of government to assist us. We did not need anyone to direct us on what we can and can't do for the community. The community was struggling, and the people of Gympie recognised that, and we got support from all over Queensland for Gympie, for that event. We had donations coming down from far north Queensland, from Brisbane, from Toowoomba to Gympie to help the community. And it was the people who did that. It was not any level of government. The people showed that we have what is needed to benefit us as a community. When we stand up, we hold the power. What My Place Gympie is about is putting unity back into community. It is about setting up our system that is built by us, for us. So we step away from the system that Malcolm talked about the WEF, the UN, and our own government, who thinks that they have a system that is set for us, that we must comply. We do not need their system. If you get a chance to go over to the flag tent, you will see some of the fabulous ideas that are being set up by My Places around Australia. There is over 140 My Places in Australia, and some of them have memberships in the thousands. And what that is everyone's contributing, because we're all learning on how we can provide our own food source network. Who goes to the supermarket and thinks every time they go that there is a higher cost to your bill at the checkout? That the quantity that is in your trolley is getting smaller, and the range that they're providing for you is less. It is a system that they have set up to control us. Our future is us. Our future is about learning how to provide our own food source network. If you do not have a space available in your property, then you can join the market gardeners. We have people who are experts, and we had the permaculture talk to us before. What this is about is that we need to start acting for ourselves. And we can do that conjointly as one. We really need everyone to stand together because they have a plan to separate and divide us. When we get people like Dr. McIntyre who suggest that the best thing for you is homegrown or naturally grown food products, because who trusts the food source network in the supermarkets? Who knows who owns most of those food source networks? It is a multinational or international organisation that is set in their own interests to suit their own hip pocket. We can change that because we as the people can set our own food source network up. And we can step away from those conglomerate supermarkets who try and dictate where your wages and incomes are spent and how much of your income is spent on food that you are putting on your table. When we work with a cooperation with our farmers, we will be able to network directly with them and cut out the middleman. And that's in our best interest. It is not in the supermarket's best interest, but we don't care about them. Because this is about community. That's what this sign is about. It is about putting unity back into community. And it has purposely been taken away from us for the last 3 years. And now it is our turn. They are setting up systems where they are trying to take away our bees, saying they are contaminating. It is our job to tell them it is a lie. We know what they are doing. We need to stand up. If we don't do it now, we will lose. And we're not going to lose. There is too many of us across Australia. We are not on our own. We are marching forward. We are going to provide for ourselves and our families and our friends and our community. For those who cannot provide for themselves, our community will provide for them. And that's where we all are together. I really want out of one thing today. I really want to thank Sharon McCauley for the effort that she put in to organise this and the speakers, to diversify the speaker list, to allow us to see all aspects of political, farming, horticulture, and particularly the number one, our rights. Government has tried to take away our rights. We are stronger than that. I invite you to go over and go through each one of the tents and the marquees, because it's about setting up our own systems. Alternative healthcare. We need to walk away from those pharmaceutical companies who have tried to control our lives, not only in the medical field but political. We need to tell them to go to hell, because that's where they're going to go when we get to them. So that'll be me for today, but I tell you what, with your turnout today, I really would love to see another few events like this where we grow bigger and bigger, because Gympie will lead the way. Thank you.
The food's still pumping, the stalls are still there. If you want to speak to any of the amazing speakers that have been here today, make sure you go up and say hello. Hang around, make sure you meet your community. And on behalf of the committee and all the people organising, I want to say a very big thank you for attending today. Let's do more of this. Let's do a big woo for more. Yeah. I think more is on the go. It's just about building community. So, big thank you. Love Gympie. So let's see Gympie thrive rather than survive. So, thank you.